Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA Manufacturers Series. It's round number 6, driving the Group 3 cars at Kyoto Driving Park. This is the longest version of the track, you can see there. Did an okay qualifying, it was about 3-4 attempts off what I expected to be able to get if I really hooked up a lap. But still reasonably happy with what I achieved, this 2 minutes 16.8. I was expecting to get down to a 0.4. I'd just done a 0.4 in a practice lobby before this race, but you can see they're starting P4, so not the worst it could be, but reasonably happy with that. Not the strongest field that you're going to come across in an FIA race. It was still, I think it was 2,000, just under 2,400 points for the win in this. And you see there Tidjany in P6 there. I don't think he'd had much practice for this, so he probably would have been a lot higher up if he had done a little bit more practice. But still a reasonably competitive field, some reasonably well-known drivers in the field, and a chance for myself to finally get some solid points and see if I can come away with a good result. I needed to get a really good, strong result at this track because obviously to get into the top 2, the final 24 stars race, I need to really get the points up to be, by the end of it, before we hit the top 24 race, I need it to be around 7,000 really, at least, I think, to be able to be one of the manufacturers that are actually into the top 24 race. It doesn't matter if you're just the top 2, your manufacturer has to be obviously into that top 24 race to be in a bit of a chance. As you can see, they're going to the back of the grid. P16 on a 2 minutes 2 minutes 18.3 and a 0.2 and a 0.3 there. Down to P18, a 2 minutes 19. Really surprised at Bokomomo only on quite that lap time. I expected him to be able to get a lot higher up that field. I've seen him on other tracks in other combinations be quite fast. Obviously it depends on, some people have preferences for tracks. One thing I always do try and do is make sure that I'm consistent on the majority of tracks that you can see there. Starting P4, we're going to go straight through to the TV replay camera for the start of this race. So starting from P4, obviously a good chance of picking up some good solid points. You can see just in front of me was the driver that made the mistake at Brands Hatch, right in front of me, and I actually gained that position from me. He's a very fast driver. I've seen him. He's probably very close to some of the fastest on the game, I think, this guy. I've raced him quite a few times and he seems really on it when he is obviously at the combination that suits his car, etc. You see obviously the Evo fairly strong at this track. Also the Toyota probably the strongest car overall on this track. That's why obviously starting P1. That Supra is such a good car on this track. It's pretty much made for this kind of track. You can see the Mercedes does struggle through the fast corners. Obviously with it being front engined, rear wheel drive rather than mid engine, it does struggle through the fast corners, but it's got stability. As you can see, P1 actually makes a mistake coming on the third lap 1, and I could have made a move down this inside, backed out of it, thought better of that, and just thought, no, there's no point, this is lap 1, I'm just going to tuck back in and just let things settle down a bit, because I don't want to be making stupid moves at this stage of racing. I'm in P4, I need a good solid result again. I cannot afford a bad result in this championship after the early rounds where I just got no lock and really didn't drive that well. But you can see there now, looking back on myself, you can see how close the field is. You can just see Tidjany in the background, in that Peugeot, and the Porsche right behind me, pushing really hard, trying to get as close as you can, and I'm trying to stay in the slipstream of Phantom. I think it's actually now the Toyota that's in front of me now after you made that mistake. So I'm trying to stay in that slipstream with that Toyota, a very fast car. It's also got good speed down the straights, but this is the area where my car was reasonably strong because I could get on the power so early. I did see that I was taking quite a different line to a lot of other drivers there. That's probably because my car can take a tighter line and then get on the power reasonably well, because the traction's so strong in the Mercedes. That's the type of area that it does suit. As you can see, all the cars reasonably clean driving so far. Not much, I haven't seen any real dirty moves, and no one really sliding off. Just P1 made that error on lap 1 and put himself down to P3. So at the moment, main concentration was just stay in this slipstream and just try. The aim was this time was to make sure I don't lose the slipstream. So do some fuel saving, but try and keep hold of the slipstream as much as possible. You can see there in P2, the Oscaro driver, known for his ability to save fuel. I knew he would be saving fuel. There's not much point trying to match his ability in that Lexus, but he's just a very, very good driver at saving fuel. You see, I got a massive tow off Oscaro going into turn 1, decided to make the move, got myself up the inside, tried to keep it nice and tight to give him space on that outside just so I didn't come into contact with him, and I made that move to put myself into P3. But obviously Oscaro in P4 now, he just tends to save a lot of fuel anyway, so I don't know how he does it. Sometimes he just has some ability to save a lot of fuel, and I just pretty much thought, well, I'll just stick with these in front, and try and save fuel as well, but obviously I knew I wouldn't be able to save as much as that Lexus is one of the better cars at it. But P1 Phantom there in the Evo pulling away, but that Supra is so strong through the fast corners and it's kind of dragging me along a bit because I'm picking up his slipstream, and now I'm able to brake fairly late. And this again is a corner that was really quite nice for the Mercedes because I could just get the power down, and I was trying to be fairly cautious as well. You see, I didn't go down to first gear for them corners. Some people would drop it into first gear, I did notice, but myself, I preferred to stay in second and just let a bit, a bit smoother on the accelerator. This would then help my tyre wear for the last stint. Obviously, the plan was to go for the first stint, do 5 laps, and obviously on that first stint, lap 5, the tyres were going to start wearing a little bit. But the Mercedes is one of its strong points is the tyre wear. I do find it's quite a stable car. You get understeer before you get any sort of loose rear, really, and that's beneficial for this kind of track where like these corners where you need to get on the power early. And again, you can see slightly different line to other drivers. A lot of people take different lines through that corner and different ways of approaching it. A lot of it is because of the way the cars handle. So doing okay so far. P3, couldn't really have asked for a better start to the race, really. Starting from P4, could have done a better qualifying lap, but I don't think I would have had enough speed to get P1 in qualifying. P1 hit a 2 minute 16.1. For myself, that wasn't possible in the Mercedes. I felt like, to get a 2 minute 16.4, it had to be a good lap. I think to get a 2 minute 16.1, it would have had to have been pretty much near perfect for myself. It probably was possible to do. I think I did see one Mercedes hit it, but you don't know what slipstreams people have got, because this track, as you can visually see, it's a very much slipstream based track. If you just hold on to some slipstream, a faster car slipstream, it can really drag you along on this track with such a power based track. And then obviously you've got the slow corners that break it up a bit, but as long as you're staying within that slipstream, it really does help you. See, going over line, first proper lap at 2 minutes 16.7, that's with some short shifting. So pace so far has been really good. Obviously the tyres were going to drop off massively on this track because it's such a long lap, times 9 tyre wear. So every lap you will see quite big drop offs in grip when I was doing this. You could feel the difference through the fast corners, and you could really tell where you see there P2 having a little look, and that was a dangerous move to make, and it looks like there was a bit of contact with P1 in that Evo, and he got a bit sideways. I think that was a bit risky. I personally wouldn't have made that move. I think that was a dangerous. I personally don't like that position to make a move anyway, because you're going into a very fast corner. It's really hard for the driver in front to do anything about it, and I don't like that move being made. So very risky, but they both got away with it. Possibly P2 picked up a penalty for that, I'm not too sure. He also could have picked up that, I think he got the penalty for when he ran wide on lap 1, but I don't know if he picked up another penalty during that as well with that little bit of contact. So far the penalty system has seemed much better for myself. I don't know what other people will think, but so far I'm enjoying this new penalty system. I think I got my first 10-second penalty today at Suzuka. Probably was just, but I got a little bit wound up with coming out the pits on fresh tyres. A car that hadn't pitted yet was trying to race me instead of just, he wasn't involved in my race, and he was just holding me up. I was trying to find a way past. I went up the inside and he turned in on me, and I got a 10-second penalty. It's the first time it's ever happened. I've not had any other penalties yet since the new penalty system, so I'm quite liking this system. I enjoy it. It promotes racing. I know you're still going to get penalties. You're not going to get a perfect system, but I definitely think the system now is better than it used to be. There's no question of that. There's a lot more racing going on. There's a lot less people stopping just before the finishing line to get rid of penalties and things. And I just think it's working, kind of. As you can see there now, P2 putting P1 under pressure. That Evo hasn't managed to really pull away too much. I think he's obviously doing some fuel saving. You can see P5 now, Oscaro in P5. He's obviously just staying behind as many cars as he can. If he drops a position, he's just letting that position. Very sensible and very tactical driving by P5, the Oscaro driver. What he's doing is he's not fighting positions, and this is what it makes perfect sense, and it's what I try and do as much as possible. If you're trying to save fuel, there's no point you battling away with other cars. He might as well just let that car go past, then tuck in the slipstream, and it just gives him more ability to save fuel. So it's really tactical driving by him, and he's doing a great job there in P5. I knew for a fact that he would have been able to save a lot more fuel than what I could in Mercedes. So I was just trying to concentrate on staying in the slipstream of that Toyota and just letting them battle, really, because I knew my tyres would be really the strongest out of these cars coming to lap 5. As you can see, the Evo going really wide. They're going side by side, and he nearly cut the front end off of that Evo, but just about made that move. And now I've got the Phantom guy in the Evo right in front of me. See, getting on the brakes, and I braked I braked quite early, to be fair, and I nearly came to the back of the Evo, but just got away with that. But again, taking a nice line through that corner, trying to get on the power as early as I can to get into that slipstream. You can see that Porsche starting to catch me back up now, because these guys in front of me, the Evo and the Supra, are really battling that hard. It's holding me up, and also I think they're starting to suffer with a bit of tyre wear. It's starting to kick in a bit, and my car felt quite strong at this stage. I felt like I had a bit more pace than them at this stage of the race. I think earlier on in the laps they probably had a bit more than I was holding on the slipstream, but now I feel like the Mercedes is coming into its own a bit now with the tyre wear, and it's a little bit more drivable than some of their cars when getting on the power. You can see going through that corner again, this is the area where I can get on the power nicely, and you can visually see, look at the gap closing in there as I get on the power. But the only issue is then I tend to get a little bit of understeer going up that hill, and the car started shuddering a little bit when I was on the power, but don't think it lost massive amounts of time. But again, I'm able to take really tight lines into these corners. You can see the other cars are having to take quite wider entries just so they're not putting as much steering angle into the car while they're getting on the power, whereas with the Mercedes I'm able to get away with that with the traction it's got and the lesser tyre wear. You can also see there Oscaro seems to have dropped back a little bit from that Porsche. I think the Porsche has started to use up some of its fuel, but you don't really see the Lexus really pushing too hard. I think he's settling for just sitting back there and saving the fuel. He's actually starting to gain a bit. You can see in the background he darted off into the pits there. I was tempted to do that because obviously lap 5 is where you're going to lose much time, and I probably should have done it because I really got held up on this lap. You can see I was trying to find a way to go round the outside. There wasn't a possibility of doing that on that corner, and then picking the slipstream back up, I started to feel like my car was a lot stronger on this lap 5, and I think the best move was to do what the Oscaro driver did and pit on lap 4. But the worrying thing for me was if I came out the pits just behind some cars down in P13, 14 or P11, 12, whatever, and they're on their old tyres and they're 2-3 seconds a lap slower, and I get held up, that could really cost me big time. So I just tried to play it safe really, and just thought of the consistent way of doing this. I didn't want to risk too much, so that's why I didn't pit in the end, because I looked on the minimap and it looked like I would be coming out fairly close to traffic. So I just decided to stay out, do lap 5, but you can visually see now, you can see on the screen just how close I am to these drivers in front. You can see looking back at myself. During the braking I'm able to get really close. As you can see there, P1, 2, 3, 4 all on one screenshot there on that TV replay camera. Another really good replay camera that I do like watching. But you can see now I was trying to save my tyre wear a little bit at this stage. You can see using mixture 2 during the fast corners and just trying to take a really tight line, and then once the grip's there then put the power down, because if you start putting the power down and it understeers, that's when the front tyres start wearing. So I was trying to save them front tyres, trying to save the rear tyres. You can see on traction using that mixture 2, then back into 1 now before we go into the pits and try and get as close as I can as we go into the pit stop phase. You can see now they're battling very hard up front, and I felt like this was going to start holding me up. You can see again getting very close to P2. I'm going to be pitting on this lap. The Porsche is right behind me. We've got 4 cars all going in the pits together, so it'll be interesting to see the different fuel levels of all the drivers in this little battle when I go into the pits. I didn't expect to be one of the highest ones because I've been driving I've been doing short shifting and using mixture 2, but I've just been trying to just hold into the slipstream and do as much fuel saving as possible. I don't really know what the other cars are like. I don't think the Toyota's particularly great, but you can see as I go in the pits, see Evolution's done the best, and I've actually done the second best there out of this group in terms of fuel saving. So I decided to go short of the diamond. You're going to see now I stopped it. Actually, I actually went a little bit past the diamond there, but not too much. I could have probably stopped it a little bit shorter to try and come out nearer to Oscaro, but I pretty much knew that Oscaro would have done that, because when I went into the pits, I seen how much fuel he had left. It was 10% more than myself, so I knew that he had done a really good job with the fuel, and he was going to jump me in the pits. 10% fuel is worth a couple of seconds at least. It's probably worth 2-3 seconds, and then he's obviously had a clean lap on his out lap, fresh tyres, pushed as hard as he could, and that's going to gain him probably 2 to 3 seconds just on the tyres. As you can see, P4 runs wide, and he's actually been disconnected now. At that stage I had to lift, and it's given P5 the chance to get in my slipstream, because as he started running wide I was really cautious about where he would rejoin, or if his car would ghost, or what was going on. So I was very hesitant on the power, and that's given now P5 to go in the slipstream. But he's made a mistake getting on the power on that very tricky corner, and he's actually lost control of his car, and now I've got nearly a 2-second gap to the Porsche behind me, and everything's looking really good at this race. You can see Ticheney and RGT Wellham were in the lead at this stage, but they had already pitted once and they were going for the 2-stop strategy. Now, I'm not sure if this was the right. It's a hard one because people were working out the pit loss at about 6 seconds, but it wasn't, because when you were rejoining the track, you were going that much slower. Your next lap, you lose 3 seconds on. So it was actually for just a tyre change, you were losing around 9. I think it was about 9-10 seconds for a tyre change, and then you'd have to go back in and do your fuel change as well. It just was. I felt like it wasn't the right strategy. I think that personally, I think if Ticheney would have stayed out and just stayed behind, he would have been a lot closer coming to the end of the race than he is going to be at this point, because he's just up ahead and he's still got a pit. But you can see Ascaro up front, in front of me there. I am starting to gain very slightly on him, just a couple of attempts, but I could see that I really wasn't gaining enough on him at this phase. I'm managing to hold off RC there behind me in the Porsche. It seems like I've got the pace to cover him, so I decided, because I need to do some fuel saving, because obviously on that first stint I did a bit, and then it bases that off of your, when you pit the diamond, is based off of your fuel saving in the first 5 laps. So as usual, just trying not to rev it out too much, decided to start saving some fuel now to try and secure this P2, because I've got 3 laps to go now, 3 laps to go, and a 3-second gap to P1, and there was no way I was gaining a second lap on that Lexus. It was too fast. It's a good car at this track anyway, and there was just no point risking a P2 to push for that P1. I wanted to just settle for this and try and maintain this position. So the one thing I didn't want to do though was let the Porsche get into my slipstream. Obviously through corners like this is where the Porsche is really strong, and I do have to be a bit cautious with the AMG Mercedes, with it being front engine. He does get a little bit more understeers than some other cars there, but as long as I could keep the Porsche out my slipstream by just judging the changing of the gears and the fuel, etc., I felt pretty confident at this stage of maintaining P2. I think if that Toyota hadn't made that mistake when he was behind me, he probably would have jumped me, and it's possible then I could have got dragged along to Ascaro in front with the Toyota slipstream, because I could hold on to his slipstream in the first stint. There was no real issue with that, and I'd done a better fuel saving job than in the pit, so I would have had reasonably equal fuel to him. So I think that if he wouldn't have made that mistake, we could have both been battling for the lead. But I wasn't complaining really, because P2 for myself in this race would be a perfect result. As you can see now, P3 getting very close to that slipstream. He's about 1.2, 1.3 seconds behind, so I'm just trying to make sure that he's not going to pick up the slipstream properly, start pushing a little bit harder whenever I need to, and just maintain that gap, make sure he doesn't get within the slipstream. That was the aim, that was how I wanted to do this race. You can see the gap to P1 is pretty much stable. It's around 3.1 seconds now, 3.2 down to 2.9. It's varying pretty much around the 3-second gap, so Ascaro's got that covered, and I pretty much realised that, we're coming to the end of lap 7, just 2 laps to go, and no real chance of making any sort of gains of that amount onto Ascaro. So just trying to keep the car settled, keep it safe, keep it smooth, not making any silly mistakes. As you can see now, the Porsche behind me is still around 1.3, 1.4 seconds behind, and I've pretty much got this covered now to that Porsche. He's not really getting close enough to pick up the slipstream. He's trying his hardest obviously, but there's no need for me to try and break that slipstream. I'm 1.2 seconds behind, so I've just got to make sure I take this corner reasonably well, try and stay as close to that blue bit of tarmac as possible on that front left hand tyre. That's where the grip is on this corner, getting on the power as early as possible. You can see my fuel is very close to being marginal. This is the issue. I wanted to make sure he doesn't get the slipstream, but I've also got to be very cautious of the fuel that I've got remaining, because if I start pushing too hard, I'm going to become into a bit of an issue when we get to the end of the race, because obviously that first stint I was in a slipstream, with a lot of time you use less fuel when in a slipstream, and you obviously can save a lot more. So it was really quite tense, to be fair. I was getting really quite nervous, because I needed a strong result at this track to put myself back in a strong position in the Manufacturers Championship. I was at one point I was down at about 9th position, I think, in the Mercedes before this race, up to 4th position, obviously after a very strong result in the Group 4 race at Tokyo, and now this result would be pretty much perfect if I could hold on to P2. At the moment, you see, got the gap under 3 seconds to Ascaro, but I'm not pushing massively, I'm not going 100% aggression, because I've got to be cautious of the fuel, I've got to be cautious of the tyres. I didn't want to make a mistake and get on the power too early and lose the rear, because this track, Although the Mercedes is one of the strongest cars in terms of its grip at the rear end and its ability on the tyres, it's still a risk for corners like this if you do go too aggressive on the power, or there's other corners like that if you hit a curve slightly wrong. It only takes one mistake to be back down to P6 or 7, and that wouldn't be a good result for myself. I need big points for these last remaining races. Luckily, the final race is going to be at the Nürburgring, one of my favourite combinations, one of my stronger combinations. Also, Group 4 there is one of my strongest combinations. How I'll fare with the Mercedes is going to be another question. I haven't driven it yet. I'm going to drive it in a bit and see how it feels. I don't expect it to be too competitive, but if I can just pick up some solid points, there could be a good chance of finishing in the top 2. So you can see there now, coming to the end of lap 8, and you can see RC Speed Freak in the Porsche made an error just before the final corner here on that tricky fast chicane round wide, and now I've got that really fast Supra behind me, 2 seconds behind. I think he had a little bit more fuel spare than myself. I decide now I've got a 2-second gap, I might as well do some fuel saving now, so into fuel mixture 2. I'm just playing it safe now. I'm not worrying about the gap decreasing or increasing to P1. I'd actually got it down to 2.7, 2.8 seconds to P1, but I thought there's no point pushing it, just I'll let P3 get closer, but as long as I do some short shifting and saving some fuel to make sure that, you know, for that final bit of power zone at the end of the lap after the final corner, he's not going to be able to get my slipstream and make a move on me. That was the aim, just to keep the gap over over half a second or something like that. You can see now it's down to 1.2 seconds where I did that fuel saving, and also the Supra is very strong through them corners anyway. It was always going to gain on me through there, so I just did fuel saving, try and make sure that I can get to the end of this race in P2. This is going to be a really tense end. You can see he's nearly on this. He picked it up very slightly through that corner, but then he's out of it again. I've managed to keep him out of it for this power zone, which was really important. If he started getting into it on the straights, that's where he's going to start gaining quite a lot. But this corner again is going to be a corner where that Toyota can really gain in on me. You can see there on the entry he's able to chuck it in much faster with that Supra, and he's pretty much in the slipstream now, but the gap's a little bit too high. You can see I was really concentrating at this point on where he was. I was looking in that mirror, and this is one of the advantages from using this view as well. I can now see where they are all the time. I know how far behind without looking at the delta. I can check on that middle top camera looking back and see where they are. You can see at this point getting a bit of understeer, trying to make sure he's not picking up my slipstream too much. Down into second gear, he's getting very close now for the final few corners. The fuel is getting very marginal as well. You can see 0.3 lap to 3% fuel left on the fuel, and I've got to get to the finishing line. And I was getting quite nervous at this stage, just trying to keep the car on the track, not make any errors. Going into the final corner now, into fuel mixture 2 for this final corner, just to make sure, because I know I'm not going to lose too much pace, and then just risking it with one mixture now, into one mixture and powering out the corner. It looks like I've got enough left to get over the line and get that P2. So down to 1% fuel and pretty much 0% basically as I go over the line. I think that would have been close to 0%, and I get that P2. So a really strong performance. I really enjoyed that race, a thoroughly enjoyable race, and some really good points again. I think that was over 2,200 points that I picked up from that race. So pretty much, I think that's my best points haulage in the Mercedes so far, and I was the top scorer in Mercedes at this round. So really good news, and more importantly, I've put myself into P2 in the Manufacturers Championship, just behind the Force driver. So really happy with that. And also I've got a really weak round to come off if I get a strong round at Nürburgring. So hopefully, if myself and Force both do really well in the next round, we can put ourselves into that top 24 race. He needs to do well and I need to do well. Hopefully it can happen, and I'll be racing in the top 24 race, the final one at Le Mans in the Mercedes. It won't be the strongest track for the Mercedes, but I don't think I'll be the weakest car there. There'll be other cars that might be fairly weak in terms of their straight line speed. Obviously the Corvette, the Ford are going to be so strong at that track. They could pick up some big points there with their straight line speed. Also the Nissan GT-R is a very strong car at Le Mans, so I expect the Nissan, the Corvette and the Ford to be doing extremely well if we get to there. Let's just hope the next round goes really well and I can get into that top 24 race. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. I thoroughly enjoyed that race. I'm going to be back with more GT Sport content tomorrow. Hopefully I have the Suzuka race from the Group 3 race that is on today uploaded tomorrow. Anyway, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscription button and also click the notification button so you don't miss any future videos I do upload every day. Thanks again for watching, everyone.